The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was still in my robe, sitting at the kitchen table with my second cup of coffee and the crossword I'd been meaning to finish since Sunday. My daughter-in-law's name lit up the screen. I almost didn't answer, not because I didn't want to talk to her, or maybe it was exactly that, and I just hadn't admitted it to myself yet. "Evelyn," she said, before I even had a chance to say hello. "We've been thinking. Craig and I have been talking, and we really feel like, well, the house is just so much space for one person." I set down my coffee cup, slowly, the way you do when you need a second to make sure your voice stays even. "Good morning to you too, Gwen," I said. She laughed the way she always laughed when she knew she'd skipped a step. Quick, apologetic on the surface, but not underneath. I should tell you about the house first, so you understand what she was really saying. My late husband and I bought this place in 1987. 4 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, a backyard with 2 oak trees he planted himself the first spring we moved in. We were 31 years old. We had nothing except the down payment my mother helped us scrape together, and the kind of stubbornness that people confuse for optimism when they're young. Gerald was gone 4 years ago now. Heart attack. Fast. No warning. The kind of death that doesn't give you time to say the things you should have been saying all along. I was 68. I am now 72. I live alone in this house with those 2 oak trees, a cat named Biscuit, and 35 years of living in every corner of every room. My son Craig grew up in this house. He learned to ride a bike in that driveway. He had his first broken heart in the upstairs bedroom. He ate dinner at this kitchen table every night until he was 22 years old. And now his wife was calling to tell me it was too much space for one person. I didn't say any of that to Gwen. I said, "I'll think about it," which is what I always said when I meant I will not be doing this, but I'm not ready to fight about it today. I should have been ready a lot sooner than I was. The first time Craig and Gwen asked to borrow money, it was 2018. He'd been laid off from his job at the logistics company, and they had 3 months of mortgage left in savings. Could I help cover one payment just to get through? Of course I could. He was my son. The second time was 6 months later. Gwen's car needed a new transmission. $4,200. I had it. I want to be careful here, because I am not telling you this to make myself sound like a victim. I'm telling you this because I spent a long time convincing myself that helping your children is just what parents do, and I needed to stop confusing love with liability. By the time Gwen called me about the house that Tuesday morning, I had been quietly covering pieces of their life for nearly 5 years, not every month, but often enough. A car payment here, an insurance deductible there. One summer, their entire family vacationed to Myrtle Beach. Because the kids had never seen the ocean and Craig's voice on the phone had that particular quality that made me feel like saying no would mean I didn't love my grandchildren. I have 2 grandchildren, Tobias, who is 17, and Lily, who is 14. Tobias, I'll be honest, I barely knew. He was polite when he had to be, monosyllabic the rest of the time, and I understood. Teenagers are like that. I raised one myself. But he never called without a reason. Never came by without a reason. Never came by without being brought. The last birthday card I got from him was the kind with a cartoon dog on the front, already signed by his mother. Lily was different. Lily used to ask if she could help me repot the plants on the back porch. She remembered I took my coffee with 2 sugars and oat milk. And one Christmas she gave me a bag of the good kind, the kind from the little specialty shop downtown, with a note that said, "For your morning quiet time, Grandma." She was 12 years old. She'd spent her own babysitting money. I thought about that note a lot over the following months. I still have it, folded in the drawer next to the kitchen table. Back to Gwen in the house. She called 3 more times that month. Each time, the language shifted a little. First it was concern. You must get so lonely rattling around in there. Then it was practical. Do you know what property taxes are going to do in this county over the next 5 years? Then finally, it was something else entirely. Craig and I have been thinking about what makes the most sense for everyone. With the equity in the house. I mean, Evelyn, you're sitting on close to $400,000. You could move somewhere smaller, somewhere that's actually designed for someone your age, and you'd have enough left over to be comfortable for the rest of your life. And we could finally get out from under our mortgage. There it was. I let a long silence sit on the line between us. I've learned to do that. Silence makes people fill space, and what people fill space with tells you a great deal. I just mean, we're all family, Gwen said. This would help everyone. I'll think about it, I said, and I hung up. Then I sat at my kitchen table for a long time with cold coffee, and I did the math I had never actually done before. Not because I didn't know the numbers, I knew them, but because I had never laid them all out in a row and looked at them directly. $51,240. That was what I had given or lent, mostly given, to Craig and Gwen over 5 years. The car, the mortgage payments, the vacation, the emergency room bill, the summer, their health insurance lapsed, Tobias's braces. Craig said they'd pay me back on that one. I don't believe he ever remembered saying it. $51,000 is not money I had lying around doing nothing. That was money from Gerald's life insurance. Money I had set aside carefully, little by little, over 40 years of a modest, careful life. Gerald worked in facilities management for the county. I was a school librarian for 28 years. We were not wealthy people. We were people who did not spend what we didn't have and saved a little more than we needed to, and figured that was the closest thing to security we were going to get. I had given away more than a third of my security to people who had just called me to suggest I sell my house to help them with their mortgage. I didn't cry. I think I was past crying by then. What I did was call my attorney. Her name is Fran. She's been my attorney since Gerald and I updated our wills in 2019, and she's the kind of woman who does not sugarcoat things, but does it so gently you almost appreciate it. I told her everything. All of it. From the first car payment to the Myrtle Beach vacation to Gwen's phone call last Tuesday morning. Fran was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Evelyn, when did you last update your estate documents?" "When Gerald passed," I said. "Craig is the primary beneficiary. I have a small policy, and the house." "And is that still what you want?" It was such a simple question. And I sat there in my attorney's office with my hands folded in my lap, and I realized that at some point in the last 5 years, without making any kind of conscious decision, I had started dreading that answer. "No," I said. "It isn't. I want to tell you about the Christmas before all of this, because I think it matters." Craig and Gwen brought the children over on Christmas Eve. They stayed for dinner. I made prime rib, Gerald's mother's recipe, the one that takes 3 days of prep if you do it right. And I did it right. I had wrapped gifts, set the table with the good dishes, put out the crystal glasses we only use twice a year. Gwen spent most of dinner on her phone, not secretly, openly. Propped against the water glass, face up, responding to messages with her thumbs while the rest of us talked around her. Craig complained about his boss for 40 minutes. He'd found a new job after the layoff. Better pay, but he was unhappy there too. I made the sounds of a listening mother. I've had practice. Tobias ate quickly and asked to be excused so he could go to the living room and play a game on his phone. And then Lily helped me carry the dishes to the kitchen. She scraped the plates without being asked. She asked me about the recipe and wrote down the ingredients in the Notes app on her phone, "So I can learn it someday," she said. She told me about a book she'd been reading, a mystery series set in Vermont, and asked if I'd ever been to Vermont, and I told her Gerald and I had driven through once in October to see the leaves. "Was it like the pictures?" she asked. "Better," I said. "Most things are better than the pictures, if you go." She smiled at me. And then she said quietly, so the others couldn't hear from the other room, "I'm sorry Mom forgot to say thank you for dinner, Grandma. It was really good. You work so hard." She was 13 years old. I almost cried, standing there at the kitchen sink. I didn't, because I didn't want her to see, and because I wasn't entirely sure I was crying about dinner. I did not tell Craig and Gwen what I was doing. That was intentional. In February, I met with Fran again, and we revised my will completely. My estate, the house, the remaining savings, the small pension, the life insurance, would go into a trust. Lily would be the primary beneficiary of the trust, accessible to her at 25. There would be a smaller amount set aside for Tobias in case he came around. I hoped he would. but I was done hoping on credit. To Craig, I left $1. I know how that sounds. I want to explain it, not to justify it, but because there is a reason I chose $1 instead of nothing. Nothing can be contested. $1 in the eyes of the law proves the omission was deliberate. It says, I did not forget you. I decided. Fran explained this to me, and I thought it was the most clarifying thing I'd heard in years, that there is a legal difference between being forgotten and being seen and still chosen against. I wanted Craig to know, someday, that I had seen him clearly. In March, I stopped the automatic transfers I had set up. The ones that sent a few $100s to their account on the first of each month. The ones that had somehow become expected without ever being discussed. I stopped them quietly. No announcement. No confrontation. I waited to see how long it would take for Craig to notice. It took 11 days. He called on a Wednesday, not at his usual time, not in the evening when we sometimes talked, in the middle of the day, which told me it was about the money before he said a word. Hey, Mom, he said. I think there might be an issue with your account. Gwen noticed the transfer didn't come through this month. I had thought about what I would say for 11 days. I had written notes. I practiced in the car, talking to myself at red lights like a woman who has run out of patience with her own silence. There's no issue, I said. I stopped them. A pause. What do you mean, stop them? I mean, I canceled the automatic transfers. All of them. I also went over my records, and I'd like to talk to you about the money I've given you and Gwen over the last 5 years when you have time. Not today, but soon. He was quiet for a moment. Then, Mom, where is this coming from? From me, I said. It's been coming from me for 5 years. I let that sit for a second, and then I said, I love you, Craig. But I am 72 years old, and I spent $51,000 helping your family, and last month your wife called me to suggest I sell my house so you could get out from under your mortgage. I need you to hear that out loud so that you understand why I'm making different decisions now. He started to say something. I think it was going to be a defense of Gwen, or an explanation, or maybe an apology. I'll never know, because I said we can talk more when you're ready to have an honest conversation. I love you. Goodbye. And I hung up. I went and sat on the back porch. It was one of those early spring days where the air is still cold, but the sun is warm enough that if you find the right spot, you can feel both at once. The oak trees were just starting to bud. Gerald planted them when they were 4 feet tall. They are now taller than the house. I sat there for a long time, and for the first time in years the silence didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like mine. Gwen called once more, about 2 weeks later. She did not mention the transfers. She mentioned the house again. Had I given it any more thought, there was a neighbor down the street who had gotten a wonderful price, and I told her very calmly that I was not planning to sell and she was welcome to stop bringing it up. She hasn't called since. Craig calls sometimes. The calls are shorter now, more careful. He asked once, about 6 weeks later, if I was angry with him, and I told him the truth. I wasn't angry. I was tired. I was tired of feeling like my value to him was financial, and I was tired of waiting for him to notice me as anything else. He didn't know what to say to that. Neither did I. We talked about his job and the weather and hung up after 15 minutes. Maybe it'll get better. I've not stopped hoping for that, not entirely. But I've stopped funding the version of our relationship that cost me everything and gave me nothing back. Lily called me last week. She'd gotten her driver's license, she said. Her dad had taken her to the DMV. She passed on the first try. She was calling, she said, because I was the first person she thought to tell. I laughed. Real laughter. The kind that catches you off guard. What made you think of me? I asked. Because you told me you failed yours the first time, she said. And the second time, and you thought I should know I had better odds than you. I did tell her that. Last Thanksgiving, while she was helping me dry dishes after dinner, while Craig watched football and Gwen scrolled through something on her tablet, we had been talking about being nervous for things, and I had told her the story to make her feel better. And she had laughed, and I had thought, this one is paying attention. She is still paying attention. I'm proud of you, I told her. Will you come over sometime and show me? We can drive to that bakery you like on Elm Street. Yes, she said, immediately, like she'd already been hoping I'd ask. I am not a rich woman. I was never going to be. Gerald and I made our peace with that 40 years ago, and then we made a good life inside of it anyway. What I have is this house, which I am not selling. These oak trees. Biscuit, the cat, who is elderly and opinionated and takes up more of the bed than you'd think possible for an 8-pound animal. A pension that covers my needs. Savings that are, finally, only for me. For the cruise to Alaska I've been thinking about for 3 years. For the kitchen renovation I keep putting off. For whatever comes next that I can't predict. I changed my will in February. I have not told Craig, because that is a conversation for when the time is right, and that time is not now. I have not told Lily either, because she is 14 years old, and she should not have to carry the weight of it. What she should know, what I intend for her to know, is that I see her. I see who she is. I see the way she pays attention to the people around her, the way she gives her time and care without keeping score, the way she remembered what I'd taken my coffee and spent her own money on a bag of it and thought that was a reasonable way to spend a Saturday. The money is not a reward for being good. I want to be clear about that. The money is just the thing I have left to give, and I want to give it to the person who showed me what giving actually looks like. There is a thing that happens, I think, when you are a parent who loves your child. You start to see their needs as your responsibility in a way that doesn't have a natural stopping point. You helped them when they were small, because they couldn't help themselves. Then you kept helping, because you could. Then you kept helping because you were afraid of what it meant if you stopped, what it would say about you, about how much you loved them, about whether you were the kind of mother who showed up. No one tells you that showing up can become a way of never having to look at what's actually there. I looked, finally. And what was there was a son who loved me more as a function than as a person, and a daughter-in-law who saw my house as an asset on a balance sheet, and a grandson who didn't know me well enough to notice I was fading, and a granddaughter who was paying such close attention she knew what kind of milk I used. That's the accounting. That's the full picture. I don't blame Craig entirely. I helped build that version of our relationship by never asking for anything in return, by making it so easy to take from me that he forgot there was a me in there beyond the taking. That's on both of us. I think that's important to say. But I am 72 years old. I do not have time for the version of this that takes another 10 years to get honest. I tried the patient route. I tried the quiet route. I tried the wait-and-see route. So I took the other one. I kept my house. I kept my savings. I found my attorney on a gray February morning, and I sat across from her desk and said the words I should have said years earlier. This isn't what I want. Let's change it. And we did. The oak trees are full now. We've had good rain this spring, and they're the deep, almost impossible green of early June, the kind that looks like something you'd see on a postcard. Gerald would have loved them this year. He had a thing about those trees. He used to check on them the way other people check the weather, as though he was personally responsible for whether they thrived. Maybe he was. He put them in the ground. He watered them through 3 droughts. He talked to them, which he would not have admitted to anyone but me. I think about him when I sit on the back porch. I think about the cruise to Alaska we planned and never took, and I think, I'm going to take it. Not because he would have wanted me to, though he would have. Because I want to. Because I am still here, and that is reason enough. I called the travel agent last Thursday. Put down a deposit on a 7-night sailing out of Seattle, leaving in September. It's not cheap. It's also not $51,000. I think I can afford it. I've been thinking about what it actually costs to wait too long. Not in dollars, though I know that number now, down to the last transfer. $51,240. I know it because I finally sat down and added it up, which is something I should have done 3 years earlier and didn't, because looking at it directly meant I had to decide what to do about it. That's the thing no one tells you about letting people take advantage of your generosity. It doesn't feel like a decision while it's happening. It feels like love. It feels like you're being a good mother, a reasonable person, someone who shows up. And then one morning you're sitting at your kitchen table in your bathrobe, And your daughter-in-law is on the phone suggesting you sell the house your husband planted oak trees in front of, and you realize that somewhere along the way, love became a line item on someone else's budget. I don't think Craig set out to use me. I want to believe that, and most days I do. But I also think that when you make it easy enough for someone to take, and you never once say this is enough, this is where I stop, you teach them something without meaning to. You teach them that you don't have limits, and people who believe you have no limits will keep walking until they find one. Lily never walked like that. She moved carefully around the people she loved. She noticed things. She spent her babysitting money on a bag of coffee because she remembered I liked a particular kind. She was 13 years old and she understood something about giving that her father, at 44, had still not learned. That it means more when it costs you something, and it means nothing when you've stopped noticing the other person is even there. What I did wasn't revenge. I want to be clear about that. Changing my will, stopping the transfers, keeping my house, none of that was about punishing Craig. It was about finally telling the truth about what I could see. And what I could see was this. One person in that family looked at me and saw me. The rest looked at me and saw what I could provide. Those are not the same thing, and I spent 5 years pretending they were. The hard part is that clarity doesn't come free. You have to give something up to get it, usually the comfortable story you've been telling yourself about why things are the way they are. For me, it was the story that said this is just how families work. You help your children, it's what mothers do. That story was true, once, but it had gotten so stretched out of shape that it had stopped describing anything real. 72 years old is not too late to stop telling yourself a story that isn't true anymore. I don't think any age is, but you have to be willing to sit with the discomfort of seeing things clearly, even when what you see is hard. Even when what you see is that someone you love has not been loving you back in any way that counts. I booked the Alaska cruise. I have a window cabin and a September departure and a small suitcase I've been adding things to for 3 weeks. Gerald always said we'd go. We never went. I'm going now, alone, and I think that's okay. I think that might actually be exactly right. Lily asked if she could come visit before I leave. She wants to see me off, she said. She'll drive herself now? I told her yes before she finished the sentence.